I was almost 40 years old and I had no idea how to be. Sometimes the hardest part of the spiritual awakening journey is identity. Who am I now? After 25 years in a cult and finding myself outside of that, and then divorced a few years later, then estranged from my kids whom I'd spent my entire life homeschooling and teaching at their school, and stayed in the marriage for them. Now they were gone too. I had no schooling, no career to fall back on. Who was I? Who was I without the hat of mother? Who was I without the hat of wife? I didn't have a career hat. Who was I without somewhere to stake my flag and say, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I move and how I be in the world. Because organized religion for me was a way of being. It defined every part of my being. It defined me as a good Christian wife. It defined me as a good Christian mom. It defined me as an honest person. It defined me as someone who loved my neighbor. And after I left, I was so angry. When I was growing up, a cult was some weird fringe group that you heard about on TV after they had done something horrible, like, they all drank poisoned Kool-Aid or held up inside compounds with weapons, keeping the government out. And it just wasn't the church down the street. So I had no idea that I had truly been in a cult-like church for over 2 decades. I didn't begin to understand that until I wasn't going there. I wasn't a part of that anymore. And because there was such deep involvement, the church was my whole life. The church was my marriage. It defined my marriage. It defined my mothering. It defined what kind of friend I was. It defined what kind of employee I was. What was I now without that? And when I started to learn what a cult actually was and how they actually operate, and I saw 9 out of 10 benchmarks of my church that lined up with the definition of a cult, I felt something in my gut. And I knew that was right. I knew they were right. My church had been a cult, more of a cult-like experience than a free thinking, free moving about the world, free to think and feel how I wanted or how was authentic to me, free to express myself. Like there was none of that. I'd been told how to think. I'd been told what to think. I'd been told what to believe, where to find those beliefs, the only sanctioned place to find those beliefs. I'd been told who my guides could be. I'd been told how to choose a husband. I'd been told whether or not a particular boy I was interested in was a good candidate to be dating or to choose as a husband. I'd been told what kind of friends to have who didn't go to our church. I'd been told how to interact with family members so that someday they would become part of the church, i.e. part of God's kingdom, i.e. saved from their sin, i.e. not go to hell. And that was so important. I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't want my family to go to hell. There was so much fear surrounding the afterlife and what would happen to me and to other people, that it perpetuated all of these other things, all of these areas that began to define my identity and define who I was and how I moved in the world. And when I left that, and my life started to fall apart in ways that the church had described to me would probably happen if I left, my marriage began to fall apart. We all of a sudden, he and I didn't have anyone telling us how to act towards each other, how to feel towards each other, how to maneuver, how to be independent instead of codependent or somehow toxic to each other. Suddenly we were on our own to figure it out. We were teenagers when he and I joined the church. He joined as a 19-year-old. I was 14. Now we're in our 40s or approaching 40. And we weren't in this organized religious cult anymore. We still went to church, but this new church was not deeply involved. They didn't assign us spiritual leaders. They didn't have us going to meetings 3-4 times a week. We were on our own to figure it out. And when we started gaining our own independence and talking about boundaries, things began to fall apart, just like the cult had said it would. And so not only was my identity as a good Christian fill in the blank, wife, mother, friend, sister, daughter, not only was that gone, but any sense of certainty. I had so much certainty as a cult member. I was so sure that I was right. I was so sure that my church was right. I was so sure that the Bible was right. I was so sure that my leadership was right. I was almost 40 years old and I had no idea how to be. My spiritual awakening had begun. And it took me to the darkest places of my soul. The places where I felt most lonely, most unseen, the most unheard, the most alone. And I didn't know how to navigate that. As my husband and I were getting divorced, it was a tumultuous time, and I didn't want to hear religion condemning me and judging me because I was the one who left. And so I didn't go to the church we had been attending. I stopped going, and he began his campaign to tell everyone lies and how he was a victim of so many things, and he lied about me to a lot of people. So I lost even my church friends that I had at that time, and I went down a very dark path. I was so mad. I was so mad at God. I had held on to that marriage and life to that point because I'd been told if you just fix your eyes on Jesus, everything will turn out. Everything will be okay. And everything was not okay. So I had done something wrong, obviously. I was the one who took my eyes off Jesus. I was the one who failed my religion because I was the one who left. So I sat in darkness, in loneliness, in anger, in confusion, doubt, guilt, shame, utter emptiness. Everything I had placed my identity in was gone. My religious status was gone. My marriage was gone. My children were gone. My friends were gone. Even to some degree, my family members were gone because I didn't feel like I could be honest and vulnerable. I was in such self-protection mode. Just before I left my ex-husband, I had been accepted to graduate school, which was a major achievement because I didn't even have a bachelor's degree. I argued and advocated for myself with the dean of admissions that I had a bachelor's equivalent because I had been in education for 20 years. When I sat down across the table from him and had a discussion, he saw things the way I saw them finally, and he wrote a letter of admission to the accrediting board. And I got to go to grad school, the school of my dreams. And it was at that school that I learned how to ask questions, because when all this was happening, I thought, God, who's telling the truth? Which church do I go to? Which religion is right? Is Christianity even the right one? Should I become a Buddhist? What should I do? Am I just in the wrong denomination? Who do I trust? I had trusted in the leadership of this organization for so long that I didn't trust people anymore. I didn't trust, pastors and leaders and anyone behind a pulpit. Didn't trust them. And I didn't know of the 40,000 plus registered Christian denominations, how I ever would sort through them and find the right one. The right one. See, that's what the cult did as well. There was such a hard black and white line. There's right and wrong. There's heaven or hell. There's in or out. And your eternity depended on being right. So I was terrified to be wrong. And I was terrified of making the wrong choice. Because what if it affected my eternity? And then what if I made the wrong choice again and I went and told all my friends and family and I brought them down a path of the wrong choice? Because it was my job as a member of this church to save the world. It was Jesus's last words to his disciples: go, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. If those were Jesus's last words, they must have been his most important ones. And so it's our job as people who know the truth to go spread that truth and help other people know that, accept that, and live their life according to that. And so a part of me, even after I left that cult, a part of me hung on to that I was still somehow on some kind of mission to figure out, okay, well, if they weren't telling the truth, which group is? Because I have to get back to the mission. I have to get back to helping people know Jesus and get saved from hell. And I got to make sure I don't go to that place either. So my question was to God, who's telling the truth? But when I went to school, I started the graduate program. It was a very unique school where we read original source texts and discussed them every week. In every subject: math, science, history, politics, religion, every subject. And we came together and we would ask questions and talk and try to get at the author's perspective. And so around the table there may be 12 to 15 people who all had different perspectives and different thoughts, and that was the goal, is to share as many as possible and to step into as many as possible. And what this did was it taught me how to question. It taught me how to take a central idea and look at it from all different angles, as many different viewpoints as I could. And this is something that was never encouraged. No way. There was one way to see an issue, and it was the church's way or the leadership's way. So I never learned how to do that. until I went to this school. This school saved my life. It taught me the skills so that I could save my life. And it was these skills that helped me change my question from God, who's telling the truth, and which church do I pick? Instead, I started asking, okay, God, if you're real, how about you show me, first of all? And if you're real and you're aware of me, show me where you've been and who you are in all of time and space. Every culture, every time throughout history, every place on earth. Where have you been? Where have you been speaking? Where have you been revealing yourself? And as I started to ask that question and explore that question and center myself in that question, answers began to come. One by one, the spiritual awakening journey began to unfold. I stopped worrying about my identity for a while and just spent time connecting, looking for, going on a bit of a scavenger hunt of spiritual proportion, looking for God, looking for the similarities across every culture's creation story, every culture's history, every culture's quest. Every culture from the dawn of time has been asking the same question. Is there anything else besides us? Is there something greater outside of what we can comprehend? Is there an original creator? Is there a source energy, a source place that everything comes from? Is there order to the universe, or is it chaos? And this school introduced me to people and cultures thousands of years predating the Bible. The first graduate program I did was a liberal arts master's degree, and I studied Western thinking. And after that one was finished, I did their Eastern Classics program, and I went back further and further and further, as far as we could go. And as I read these other texts, the Vedas and the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita and the sutras and ancient Chinese history and Buddhist history, as I spanned the globe and went deeper and deeper into time, I found that we're all asking the same question. Who am I? Who are you? And I found incredible comfort in that. I found deep connection to people. And then I learned about quantum physics after I was done with the grad school programs and started living life and experiencing life and exploring healing and energetics and spirituality. I found I didn't resonate with any religion anymore, anything organized, because I found capital truth everywhere I looked. And I came to the conclusion that there is an intelligent designer. There is order and beauty in the universe. And there is a deep desire that realm has to connect with me and my life. Because it is me. I am it. Quantum physics opened a whole new world of what is possible when I observe, what is possible when I am observed, what is possible with all of life, and the connection that we all share because of energy, because everything is made of energy. So for me, I found that the most powerful part was synthesizing the ideas or connecting the dots between all the different things that I had learned over 2.5 years in grad school, together with what I grew up learning in the Bible, together with what I was learning in quantum physics about connection and energy and observation and superposition. It was the connecting of the dots of all of these different things that helped me to form a new identity, that helped me discover that everything I needed to know was actually already inside of me, because I am made of the stuff of the universe. And so it's not external. It's not like Jesus said, you're going to look here, you're going to look there, you're going to say, oh, there it is. No, there it is. Oh, it's not over there, not over there. The kingdom of God is within you, he said. And I found that to be true. Every part of my life, every version of me that I have created and experienced is still with me, because it's all energy. And so my identity cannot be minimized to a single role: mother, wife, daughter, friend, coach, healer. Identity is bigger than that. Those roles come and go. Those roles change throughout the years. And staking my flag in any one of them makes life a very unstable, scary place to be. So I'm grateful that I learned to zoom out and adopt a 30,000-foot view of existence. What is it to be? Being must come before doing. If you place your identity in the things that you do, the roles that you play, instead of the ground of all being, you will be like that thing Jesus said, tossed here and there in the storms, and learning to go inward and find my divine feminine sense of being is what I've become most passionate about in my own life. I maintain the journey to do that. There are always things coming up that are shaking more of these early frameworks that got stuck in there somewhere, shaking loose. Every time I experience something that knocks a little piece off, where I'm misplacing my identity, or I have in the past misplaced an identity, and so there's an energy sort of swimming around in my existence somewhere that hasn't been processed, which is why I take the approach I do with my clients, the women that I work with, to heal themselves from a mindset place, from a learning, and also an energetic place, and a healing of old energy, and a moving on of that energy in a very physical, tangible way. It's what I have found to be most effective in my life, and all the women I've worked with have said the same thing, that talk therapy only got them so far. It was really combining the two, combining the subconscious rewiring with the energetic healing that has made the fastest, quantum leap jump kind of movements. And I love doing this work in myself and together guiding other people. You are the hero of your own story, of your own journey. You have everything in you that you need. It is who you are. You are divine energy. You are the wisdom of the ages, because that is where you were formed and made, in divine wisdom, in divine clarity, That is the ground from which you spring forth. And you have access. You have access to that because it is the core of who you are. This life and all the experiences you've had, perhaps through dirty laundry on top of that core of who you are. Think of it as a little ball of light is your core, and all the experiences of life are like another piece of dirty clothing that you wore for a day or a week or whatever, and threw over top of this little ball of light. It may be that this little ball of light is underneath a mountain of laundry, but it's still there. It's just needing to be uncovered. It's time to do the laundry. It's time to start sorting the clothes. When you go to do laundry, don't you sort the lights from the darks, from the mediums, from the towels, you make your piles from the delicates. You put your delicates in a pile, and things get washed and looked at individually and broken down into manageable pieces. It's how you end up with your white staying white instead of turning pink from a red sock or a red shirt thrown in the wrong pile. Life is very similar. We have core wounds from our childhood that we brought with us, and our brain is wired to survive, and so it looks for evidence of the things that it created, the programs it created in childhood. So it's just time to sort everything out and do the laundry so that you can uncover that ball of light and start living your life from the ball of light place, instead of picking up a piece of dirty clothes and saying, oh, that must be my identity. That must be what I'm supposed to do. And then go do that thing only to find it was just a dirty shirt. It was just a hat. I truly believe that once we start to reclaim that core light identity, one by one, when mankind begins to remember who we really are, that is what will usher in this new earth. That is what it means when Christ said he's coming back. It is an awareness of who we are and where we come from and the divine nature that is in us, and a living from that place. Rooting ourselves deeper and deeper into that truth, capital T truth, that identity. That's what clarifies our purpose. That is what connects us to one another. And that is what opens the fully abundant life that organized religion promised and could never deliver on. Thanks for being here. I love you.